Hello and welcome to the Drowsy Architect. We tell the stories of the world's greatest buildings, slowly, gently, as bedtime stories for grown-ups. The narration is calm, the music is soft, and if you fall asleep before the end, that is exactly what we are here for. Tonight, we visit the Giza Plateau, a place where 4,500 years ago, a pharaoh named Khufu raised a mountain of stone that would outlast every empire that followed. 2.3 million blocks, and the only ancient wonder still standing. Now settle in and let us begin. If you were to stand at the edge of the Giza Plateau on a still night, with the last warmth of the Egyptian sun fading from the stone beneath your feet, you would see something that no photograph, no documentary, no textbook could ever quite prepare you for. Rising from the desert floor, enormous and impossibly solid, is a shape so simple, so ancient, and so perfectly placed against the sky that it seems less like something built and more like something that has always been there. The Great Pyramid of Giza, a mountain of stone, 2.3 million blocks of limestone, stacked and fitted and polished into a shape that has outlasted everything. Every empire, every dynasty, every war, every flood. It was already ancient when the Greeks first saw it and named it a wonder of the world. It was already ancient when Cleopatra walked the streets of Alexandria. It was already ancient when the Roman legions came marching into Egypt and stood at its base and could not quite believe what they were looking at. And tonight, on this quiet evening, with the stars beginning to appear above the desert, it is still here. 4,500 years. Let that settle for a moment. 4,500 years. Not a ruin, not a fragment, not a sketch recovered from a buried archive. The actual thing, still standing, still complete, still casting its shadow across the sand, just as it did when the pharaoh who built it was alive to see it finished. You know the shape, of course. Everyone does. It is one of the most recognizable forms in all of human history, a perfect pyramid rising from a square base to a single vanishing point against the sky. You have seen it on postcards, on banknotes, on the covers of history books, in the opening sequences of films. But tonight, we are not interested in the icon. We are interested in the story. Because behind this silent mountain of stone is one of the most extraordinary human endeavors ever undertaken. A story of ambition and faith and engineering so precise that modern scientists still struggle to explain it. A story of tens of thousands of workers living and eating and sleeping in a temporary city built in the shadow of the pyramid they were raising, block by block, year after year, under the burning Egyptian sun. It is the story of a king who wanted to touch the sky, and of a civilization that found a way to help him do it. It is also, and this is the part that surprises most people, a story about food, about bread and beer, about rope and copper and water and sand, about the ordinary materials and the ordinary people who made the extraordinary possible. Because the Great Pyramid was not built by gods, it was not built by magic, it was built by human hands, by backs that ached, by fingers that bled, by eyes that squinted in the desert sun, by hearts that beat with pride and exhaustion, and the quiet knowledge that they were creating something the world would never forget. So settle in, let the day fall away behind you. There is no rush tonight, no quiz at the end, no bullet points to memorize, just a story told slowly beneath the stars of an ancient desert. Close your eyes if you like, let the darkness wrap around you, and imagine that you are there on the Giza Plateau, under the Egyptian stars, with the warm stone beneath your feet and the cool night air on your face, and the pyramid rising above you, silent and immense and patient. Let us begin. Our story begins not with the pyramid itself, but with the river, the Nile. If you have never been to Egypt, it is difficult to understand just how completely the Nile defines everything. Not just the geography, not just the agriculture, everything, the calendar, the economy, the religion, the architecture, the entire rhythm of life, for thousands upon thousands of years, was dictated by one long, slow, magnificent river. Every summer, the Nile would flood. It would swell with rains that had fallen far to the south, in the highlands of Ethiopia and the forests of Central Africa, and the water would travel northward, slowly, gathering volume and strength, until it spilled over the banks of the river valley and spread across the flat Egyptian plains. And when the waters receded, they left behind a thin layer of dark, rich silt, black soil, fertile beyond measure, and from that soil, the Egyptians grew barley and wheat and flax and papyrus. They fed themselves, they fed their animals, they built a civilization. Without the Nile, there would be no Egypt, no pharaohs, no temples, no gods carved in stone, no pyramids. It was the river that made everything possible. And the Egyptians knew it. They worshipped it, they measured it, they tracked its rising with a devotion that bordered on obsession, because when the flood came on time, there would be abundance, and when it didn't, there would be famine. The pharaoh, the king of Upper and Lower Egypt, was understood to be the mediator between the people and the gods. His role was not merely political, it was cosmic. He was the one who maintained Ma'at, the Egyptian concept of order, of balance, of the universe functioning as it should. When the pharaoh was strong, the Nile would flood on time, the crops would grow, the people would prosper. And when the pharaoh died, his journey was not over. It was, in many ways, just beginning. To understand why the Great Pyramid was built, you must first understand what death meant to the ancient Egyptians. It was not the end, not in any sense that we might recognize. Death was a transition, a doorway, the moment when the ka, the life force, separated from the body, and the ba, something like the personality or soul, began its journey through the underworld. But the journey was dangerous. The underworld was filled with trials and gates and fearsome creatures. The dead soul would be tested, questioned, weighed. And so the Egyptians prepared. They preserved the body because the ka would need it in the afterlife. They filled the tomb with food and clothing and furniture and jewelry because the dead would need those things too. They inscribed the walls with spells and prayers to guide the soul through the darkness. For ordinary people, this preparation was modest, a simple grave, a few offerings, a prayer spoken by the living. But for the pharaoh, the preparation was on an entirely different scale. Because the pharaoh was not an ordinary soul, he was divine. He was the son of Ra, the sun god, and when he died, he would ascend to the heavens to join the gods, to sail with Ra across the sky in the solar bark. His tomb had to be worthy of that journey. It had to be immense. It had to be eternal. It had to be visible from the heavens themselves. And so the Egyptians built pyramids. Now, the Great Pyramid was not the first pyramid ever built. That honor belongs to a structure some 200 kilometers to the south, at a place called Saqqara. Around 2670 BC, a pharaoh named Djoser of the 3rd dynasty commissioned his architect, a man named Imhotep, to build him a tomb unlike anything the world had ever seen. Imhotep was a genius, a polymath, a priest, a physician, a poet, and an architect. He was one of the very few non-royals in Egyptian history to be deified after his death, worshipped as a god of medicine and wisdom for centuries after he was gone. And what Imhotep designed for Djoser was the step pyramid. It began as a simple mastaba, a flat-topped rectangular tomb, which was the standard royal burial of the time, but Imhotep kept building. He stacked one mastaba on top of another, each one smaller than the last, until the structure rose in 6 distinct steps, to a height of about 60 meters. It was the tallest building in the world, and it was surrounded by a vast complex of courtyards and temples and ceremonial buildings, all enclosed within a limestone wall. The complex at Saqqara was a city in miniature, a landscape built for the dead, the first of its kind. And it changed everything. Because Imhotep had proven something extraordinary, he had proven that you could build in stone at a monumental scale and that the structure would endure. Before Imhotep, Egyptian buildings were made of mud brick, strong enough for a house, strong enough for a palace, but not strong enough for eternity. Mud brick crumbles, it dissolves in rain, it wears away in wind. A stone does not. Stone endures, stone defies time, stone says, I was here and I will still be here when everything else has gone. Imhotep understood this. He understood that the pharaoh needed a tomb not just for decades or centuries, but for all of time, and for that, you needed stone. The step pyramid still stands today, damaged, weathered, partially collapsed, but standing. 4,600 years after it was built, Imhotep would have been satisfied. After Djoser, every pharaoh wanted a pyramid. Over the next century, the Egyptians experimented. They refined their techniques. They learned, sometimes painfully, what worked and what didn't. At a site called Madam, a pharaoh named Sneferu, the father of Khufu, built a pyramid that partially collapsed during or shortly after construction. The outer casing gave way, leaving a strange, tower-like structure surrounded by rubble. It still stands today, a monument to ambition outrunning understanding. Sneferu tried again at Darsha. He began a second pyramid, but halfway up, something went wrong. The angle of the walls was too steep, cracks appeared, the builders panicked and reduced the angle abruptly, creating a distinctive bent shape. It is known today, quite understandably, as the bent pyramid. Still not satisfied, Sneferu built a third pyramid, also at Darsha. This time, the builders got the angle right from the start, a clean, consistent slope, rising smoothly from base to apex. It is called the Red Pyramid because of the reddish color of its exposed limestone core. The Red Pyramid was a triumph. It was the first true smooth-sided pyramid in Egyptian history. And it set the stage for what was about to come. Because Sneferu's son, the new pharaoh, had plans that would dwarf everything his father had achieved. His name was Khufu. Khufu came to the throne around 2589 BC. He was the son of Sneferu and Queen Hetepheres. He was of the 4th dynasty, the golden age of pyramid building. We know surprisingly little about him as a person, almost nothing in fact. The only surviving image of Khufu that is universally accepted is a tiny ivory statuette, about 7.5 centimeters tall. You could hold it in the palm of your hand. It was found at Abydos, not at Giza, and it shows a small, stout figure seated on a throne, wearing the red crown of Lower Egypt. That is all we have, 7.5 centimeters of ivory, for the man who built the largest structure on Earth. Everything else we know about Khufu comes from later sources, and most of it is contradictory. The Greek historian Herodotus, writing more than 2,000 years after Khufu's death, described him as a cruel tyrant who forced 100,000 slaves to build his pyramid. But Herodotus was writing from hearsay. He never saw the original records. He was working from stories told to him by Egyptian priests, who may have had their own reasons for painting Khufu in a certain light. Modern archaeology tells a very different story, but we will come to that. For now, what matters is this. Khufu had inherited a kingdom at the height of its power. He had the resources, he had the workforce, he had the administrative machinery of a highly organized state, and he had the example of his father's 3 pyramids, each one more successful than the last. He chose a site on the Giza Plateau, a flat limestone shelf on the western bank of the Nile, just south of the apex of the delta, visible from the ancient capital of Memphis. And he began to build. But before we talk about the building, let us talk about the choosing. The Giza Plateau was not selected at random. It was chosen with the same precision that would characterize every other aspect of the pyramid's construction. The plateau is a natural shelf of nummulitic limestone, a dense, load-bearing rock formed from the fossilized shells of ancient sea creatures. Millions of years ago, this desert was an ocean floor. The limestone that would become the core of the pyramid was born in that vanished sea. The site needed to be on the western bank of the Nile. In Egyptian cosmology, the west was the land of the dead. The sun set in the west. The afterlife lay in the west. Every royal tomb, every mortuary temple was built on the western bank. The eastern bank was for the living. The western bank was for eternity. The site needed to be visible from Memphis, the capital of the Old Kingdom, which lay on the eastern bank of the river, a few kilometers to the south. The pharaoh wanted his monument to be seen. He wanted the people of the capital and every traveler sailing up or down the Nile to see the pyramid rising on the horizon. And the site needed to be close to the river, but not too close. Close enough for the stone barges to deliver their cargoes, far enough that the annual flood would never threaten the foundations. The Giza Plateau met every requirement. The ground was prepared with extraordinary care. The builders first cleared the surface, removing loose sand and rubble down to the solid bedrock. Then they leveled the bedrock itself. How do you level a platform the size of 8 football pitches without modern surveying equipment? One theory is that the builders cut a grid of shallow channels into the rock, filled them with water, and used the water surface as a level reference. Water always finds its own level. By cutting the rock down to the water line in every channel and then removing the ridges between the channels, they could create a perfectly flat surface. It is a simple technique, but applied with patience and skill, it produces results of astonishing accuracy. The base of the pyramid is level to within 2.1 centimeters. That is not a rough estimate. That is a measured fact, confirmed by Flinders Petrie in the 1880s and reconfirmed by modern surveys since. 2 centimeters, over 230 meters. That is the standard they set for themselves before a single block was laid. The orientation of the pyramid is equally remarkable. The 4 sides face almost perfectly north, south, east, and west. The deviation from true north is about 3 minutes and 6 seconds of arc. That is 3/60ths of 1 degree. How did they achieve this? The most likely method involved the stars. The ancient Egyptians were careful observers of the night sky. They tracked the movements of the stars with a devotion that was both religious and practical. One technique that has been proposed is the simultaneous transit method. An observer would watch a circumpolar star, a star that never sets, as it crossed the meridian. By marking the star's position at its highest and lowest points and bisecting the angle, you could determine true north with remarkable accuracy. Another method involved the alignment of stars in the constellation we now call Ursa Minor, the Little Bear. The Egyptian astronomer priests may have used the positions of specific stars as they rose and set, creating sighting lines that pointed due north. Whatever method they used, the result was precise, more precise than many modern buildings. And this was not an accident. The Egyptians believed that the pharaoh's soul would travel northward toward the circumpolar stars, the stars that never set, the stars they called the imperishables. The pyramid had to point the way. Its passages had to align with the sky. The pyramid was not just a tomb. It was a machine for resurrection, a device designed to launch the pharaoh's soul into the eternal sky. Now the building begins, and the numbers are staggering. The base of the Great Pyramid covers an area of about 13 acres. Each side is approximately 230 meters long. The original height, before the capstone and the upper courses were lost, was about 146 meters. That is taller than the Statue of Liberty, taller than Big Ben. For nearly 4,000 years, it was the tallest structure on Earth. 2.3 million blocks of stone, some of them weighing as much as 80 tons, though the average block weighs about 2.5 tons. The total mass of the pyramid is estimated at 6.1 million tons. And the precision is what stops you in your tracks. The base is leveled to within just 2.1 centimeters across its entire 230-meter span. Imagine that, a platform the size of 8 football pitches, and the variation in height from one corner to the other is less than the width of your thumb. The 4 sides are aligned to the cardinal compass points, north, south, east, and west, with an accuracy of 3/60ths of a single degree. The ratio of the perimeter of the base to the height is almost exactly 2 pi, whether this was intentional or a byproduct of the building method, is one of the many things that scholars still debate. These are not the numbers of a rough, crude or improvised construction. These are the numbers of a civilization that understood geometry, surveying, logistics, and stoneworking at a level that was not matched again for millennia. So how did they do it? This is perhaps the most asked question in all of archaeology, and the honest answer, the truly honest answer, is that we do not know for certain. Not every detail, not every technique. The Egyptians left no blueprints, no construction manuals, no foreman's diary explaining how the blocks were lifted into place. But we know far more than popular culture often suggests. The Great Pyramid was not built by aliens. It was not built by magic. It was not built by some lost technology that we have forgotten. It was built by human beings, using the tools and knowledge available to them, applied with extraordinary skill and organization. Let us walk through what we know. The first challenge was the stone itself. The bulk of the pyramid, the core blocks, were quarried from the Giza Plateau itself. The limestone bedrock was cut into blocks using copper tools, chisels and picks, along with harder stone hammers made of dolerite. The quarrymen would cut channels around each block, then lever it free from the bedrock using wooden wedges. It was brutal, slow, physical work, but it was work the Egyptians understood deeply. They had been quarrying stone for centuries. The finer limestone, the smooth white casing stones that once covered the entire surface of the pyramid, came from across the river, from the quarries at Tura, on the eastern bank of the Nile. These blocks were of a much higher quality, dense, fine-grained, brilliant white when polished. And the granite, used for the internal chambers, came from even further away, from Aswan, nearly 1,000 kilometers to the south. These massive blocks, some weighing 40 or 50 tons, were transporting by barge down the Nile during the annual flood, when the river was at its widest and deepest. The logistics alone are breathtaking. Thousands of blocks, hundreds of kilometers across water and sand, and all of it coordinated, timed to the seasons, planned years in advance. Moving the blocks from the quarry to the construction site was one challenge. Raising them into position, higher and higher as the pyramid grew, was quite another. The most widely accepted theory is that the Egyptians used ramps, but the exact form of the ramp is a matter of debate. A straight ramp leading from the ground directly to the working face of the pyramid would work for the lower courses, but as the pyramid grew taller, the ramp would have to grow longer to maintain a manageable gradient. By the time you reached the upper courses, the ramp itself would have to be nearly as massive as the pyramid. It doesn't quite make sense. A spiral ramp, wrapping around the outside of the pyramid as it rose, is another possibility. This would keep the ramp compact, but it would obscure the faces of the pyramid during construction, making it difficult to check the alignment and the angle. A more recent theory, proposed by the French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin in 2007, suggests an internal ramp, a tunnel spiraling upward inside the pyramid itself, through which the blocks were dragged on sledges. Houdin based his theory on anomalies detected by thermal imaging and on the observation that the Grand Gallery, that magnificent ascending corridor inside the pyramid, could have served as a counterweight system, with heavy blocks descending the gallery to help pull blocks upward on the other side. It is an elegant theory, and it is not the only one. The truth is probably a combination: straight ramps for the lower courses, where the blocks were heaviest and most numerous, some form of spiral or internal system for the upper courses, where the blocks were smaller and fewer. What is certain is that the Egyptians solved the problem. Whatever method they used, it worked. The pyramid rose course by course, year after year, for approximately 20 years. Let us pause here and think about what 20 years of continuous construction actually looks like. The average block in the pyramid weighs about 2.5 tons. There are 2.3 million of them. Over 20 years of construction, that means roughly 300 blocks were placed every single day. Every day. Not just on the good days, not just when the weather was fine and the workers were fresh. Every day, through the burning heat of summer, when temperatures on the plateau could reach 45 degrees, through the dust storms that swept in from the western desert, through the flood season, when the quarry workers shifted to transport duty and the barges carried stone across the swollen Nile. 300 blocks a day. That is one block every 2 minutes for a 12-hour working day. The logistics required to achieve this are almost incomprehensible by any standard. You need quarry teams cutting stone, you need transport teams moving stone, you need ramp teams hauling stone, you need masons trimming and fitting stone, you need surveyors checking alignment, you need water carriers keeping the sledge paths wet, you need tool makers sharpening and replacing worn copper chisels, you need rope makers, you need carpenters building sledges and scaffolding. You need cooks preparing food. You need supervisors coordinating all of it. It was, in every meaningful sense, a city-sized industrial operation, the largest construction project the world had ever seen, and it ran smoothly for 2 decades. The tools were simple but effective. Copper chisels for cutting the softer limestone, dolerite hammers, balls of hard igneous rock for pounding the harder granite, wooden wedges that could be soaked with water to expand and crack stone along natural fracture lines, wooden sledges for dragging blocks across the sand, rollers, perhaps, levers, certainly, copper saws for cutting precision surfaces. And rope, enormous quantities of rope, made from papyrus fibers or from the tough fibers of the hafa grass that grew along the riverbanks. Rope for pulling, rope for lashing, rope for binding. The entire construction effort, from quarry to apex, depended on rope. The Egyptians were master rope makers. They could produce cordage strong enough to haul a 40-ton block of granite up an incline, and they could produce it in the quantities needed, which was staggering. One estimate suggests that the pyramid project consumed hundreds of kilometers of rope over its 20-year life. Water was equally important, not just for drinking, although the workers consumed enormous quantities in the desert heat, but for the sledge paths. Experiments have shown that pouring water on sand ahead of a loaded sledge reduces the friction by as much as 50%. A wall painting from the tomb of Hotep, dating to about 1900 BC, shows exactly this. A worker pouring water from a jug in front of a sledge carrying a colossal statue. The Egyptians knew what they were doing. They had been doing it for a very long time. And what was it like to be one of those workers? Imagine waking before dawn. The air is cool, almost cold. The desert night gives up its warmth quickly. You sleep on a reed mat in a long dormitory, shared with a dozen other men from your work gang. The sounds of the waking camp fill the darkness, footsteps, coughing, the rattle of tools being collected. You eat a breakfast of bread and beer, The bread is coarse, baked from emmer wheat, gritty with sand that has worked its way into the flour during grinding. The beer is thick and nourishing, more like a liquid porridge than the clear amber drink we know today. It is food as much as drink. Then you walk to the site. The pyramid rises before you in the grey dawn light, impossibly large, the upper courses catching the first pink light of the sun while the base is still in shadow. You have been working on this structure for months, perhaps years, and still, every morning, the sight of it stops you for a moment. You climb the ramp to the working level. Your gang is responsible for placing blocks on the north face, 20 courses up. The blocks arrive on sledges, hauled up the ramp by teams of men pulling on ropes. Your job is to guide the block into position, to check the fit, to make sure it sits level and true and tight against the block beside it. The work is hard. The sun is merciless by midday. You drink water constantly. You rest when the supervisors allow it. You eat a midday meal of bread and fish and onions. But there is pride in the work. Your gang has a name, the Pure Ones of Khufu. You have painted it on the blocks you have placed. You are building something that will last forever. You know this. Everyone knows this. The pharaoh himself, the living God, has commanded this pyramid, and you are part of it. In the evening, you return to the village. There is more food, more beer, perhaps music, the sound of a flute or a hand drum drifting across the camp. The stars come out, thick and brilliant, and the pyramid stands against them, black and solid and growing, day by day, toward the sky. Let us step inside. The entrance to the Great Pyramid is on the northern face, about 17 meters above the base. It was originally hidden behind the smooth casing stones, invisible to anyone who didn't know exactly where to look. Once inside, you enter a descending passage. It is low, narrow, about 1 meter wide and 1.2 meters tall. You have to crouch. The air is warm and still. The stone presses close on every side. This passage descends at an angle of about 26 degrees, cutting through the body of the pyramid and into the bedrock beneath it, until it reaches a subterranean chamber, an unfinished room roughly cut from the living rock, about 14 meters long and 8 meters wide. Its ceiling is low. Its floor is uneven. It was either abandoned during construction or left deliberately incomplete. For a long time, this was the only passage known to exist, but there is another. About 28 meters down the descending passage, a second passage branches upward. This ascending passage, the same cramped dimensions, climbs at the same 26-degree angle up through the heart of the pyramid. And then it opens. The Grand Gallery is one of the most extraordinary architectural spaces ever created. It is 47 meters long, 8.5 meters high, and it rises at that same relentless 26-degree angle, climbing through the interior of the pyramid like a cathedral turned on its side. The walls are built with a technique called corbelling. Each course of stone steps inward slightly from the one below, narrowing the space as it rises, until the ceiling is just over 1 meter wide at the top. The effect is vertiginous. Standing at the bottom and looking up, the walls seem to converge towards some impossibly distant point above you. The stonework is extraordinary. The blocks are fitted so tightly that you cannot slip a piece of paper between them. After 4,500 years, the joints are still precise. What was the Grand Gallery for? Some scholars believe it served a practical purpose during construction, as a storage space for the granite plugs that would later seal the ascending passage. Others believe it had a ceremonial function or a structural one, distributing the immense weight of the pyramid above the king's chamber. Or perhaps it was simply meant to inspire awe. If so, it succeeds. At the top of the Grand Gallery, you pass through a low vestibule and enter the king's chamber. This is the heart of the pyramid, the reason it was built, the room where the body of Khufu was laid to rest, surrounded by everything he would need for his journey through the afterlife. The chamber is built entirely of red granite, brought from Aswan, polished smooth. The room is about 10.5 meters long, 5 meters wide, and 6 meters high. The walls are flat and unadorned. There are no inscriptions, no paintings, no carvings. Just stone. In the center of the western wall sits the sarcophagus, a single block of granite, hollowed out, with no lid. It is slightly wider than the entrance to the chamber, which means it must have been placed here during construction, before the walls were completed around it. The sarcophagus is empty now. Whatever was once inside it, the mummy of Khufu, the canopic jars, the amulets, the treasures, is long gone, taken by tomb robbers centuries or perhaps millennia ago. But the room remains, silent, cool, utterly still. And above it, hidden within the body of the pyramid, are 5 relieving chambers. These are low spaces, stacked one above the other, designed to distribute the colossal weight of the pyramid and prevent the ceiling of the king's chamber from collapsing. The top relieving chamber has a peaked roof, like an inverted V, which channels the weight outward to the sides. It is an elegant structural solution, and one that has worked perfectly for 4,500 years. There is one more chamber that deserves mention. Between the subterranean chamber and the king's chamber, reached by a horizontal passage branching off from the bottom of the Grand Gallery, is a room that has been somewhat misleadingly named the Queen's Chamber. It has nothing to do with a queen. The name was given by Arab explorers centuries later, based on their own burial customs. In reality, the Queen's Chamber may have been intended as an earlier burial chamber for Khufu, abandoned when plans changed, or it may have served as a serdab, a sealed room for the Ka statue of the pharaoh. The chamber is smaller than the king's chamber, about 5.5 meters by 5 meters. The ceiling is pitched, forming a pointed arch. In the eastern wall, there is a niche, a corbelled recess about 4.5 meters high. Its purpose is unknown. 2 narrow shafts lead from the queen's chamber into the body of the pyramid. For a long time, they were assumed to be air shafts, but in 1993, a German engineer named Rudolf Gantenbrink sent a small robot up one of the shafts and discovered that it was blocked by a small limestone slab with 2 copper pins embedded in it. Behind that slab was another slab, and behind that, mystery. In 2002, a National Geographic expedition sent another robot, called Pyramid Rover, up the same shaft. The robot drilled a small hole through the first blocking stone and pushed a tiny camera through. On the other side was a small space, about 20 centimeters deep, and another stone slab. Whatever lies beyond that second slab remains unknown. The shafts in the Queen's Chamber are unique in another way. Unlike the shafts in the king's chamber, which emerge on the outer surface of the pyramid, the queen's chamber shafts were originally sealed at both ends. They did not penetrate the outer walls. They were hidden passages leading to hidden blockings in hidden parts of the pyramid. Were they symbolic passages for the pharaoh's soul? Were they structural features? Were they part of some abandoned plan that was never completed? No one knows. The Queen's chamber keeps its secrets as stubbornly as the rest of the pyramid. And there is something almost comforting about that. In a world where information is available at the touch of a screen, where satellites can photograph every meter of the Earth's surface, where algorithms can predict your preferences before you know them yourself, there is still a room inside a 4,500-year-old pyramid that we do not understand. The universe is not yet fully mapped. There are still mysteries, there are still locked doors and sealed passages and questions without answers. And tonight, we can let those mysteries be. We don't need to solve them. We don't need to understand everything. We just need to know that they are there, that the world is still wider and deeper and stranger than we think. Now let us step back outside, into the night air, into the vastness of the desert. Take a moment to breathe. The air is different out here after the close confines of the pyramid's interior, wide and open and scented with dust and distance. The sky is enormous, the stars are brilliant, and the pyramid, the thing you were just inside, towers above you, blocking out a great triangle of sky. It is a strange feeling to have been inside something so massive, to have walked through its corridors, to have stood in its chambers, and now to stand outside it and see it whole. The outside and the inside are such different experiences that they almost seem to belong to different structures. Because the Great Pyramid did not stand alone, it was the centerpiece of an entire mortuary complex, a carefully planned landscape of buildings and pathways designed to serve the pharaoh's spirit for eternity. To the east of the pyramid, facing the rising sun, stood the mortuary temple. This was where the priests would perform the daily rituals, offerings of food and drink and incense, prayers and recitations, the maintenance of the pharaoh's cult every day for as long as the kingdom endured. The mortuary temple was connected by a long covered causeway, a walled corridor that descended from the plateau to the valley floor. At the bottom of the causeway, beside the river, stood the valley temple. This was where the pharaoh's body was first received, where the mummification rituals may have been performed, where the funeral procession began its ascent to the pyramid. The causeway was enclosed, roofed, decorated with painted reliefs on its interior walls. The funeral procession would have walked this corridor in torchlight, carrying the pharaoh's body upward from the world of the living to the world of the dead, from the river to the desert, from the east to the west. Almost nothing remains of Khufu's mortuary temple and causeway today. The stones were carried away centuries ago, reused for other buildings, but the foundations are still visible, and fragments of the causeway have been found, enough to suggest that it was one of the most magnificent structures on the plateau. Herodotus, who visited Giza around 450 BC, wrote that the causeway took 10 years to build, and that it was decorated with carvings of animals. He described it as a work almost as impressive as the pyramid itself. Herodotus was prone to exaggeration, but the causeway was clearly a significant structure in its own right. Surrounding the pyramid on three sides were smaller pyramids, three on the eastern face, known as the Queen's Pyramids. These may have been built for Khufu's wives, or for his daughters, or perhaps for the Ka, the spiritual double of the pharaoh himself. Each Queen's Pyramid was a miniature version of the Great Pyramid, about 20 meters high, with its own small mortuary chapel, its own burial chamber, its own entrance passage. Beyond the Queen's Pyramids, stretching in orderly rows across the plateau, were the mastaba tombs of the courtiers, the nobles, the officials, the high priests, the architects and engineers who had helped design and build the pyramid complex. These were flat-topped rectangular tombs with decorated internal chambers and offering niches where the families of the dead could bring food and prayers. The mastabas were arranged in a grid pattern, neat and orderly, like a planned city of the dead. Because that is exactly what it was, a city, the city of the dead, the pyramid at its center, like a palace, the mastabas around it, like the houses of the courtiers, the causeways and temples, like the roads and public buildings. In death, as in life, the pharaoh was surrounded by his people. To the southwest, two other pyramids rise from the plateau, the Pyramid of Khufu, Khufu's son, which is slightly smaller but appears taller because it was built on higher ground, and the Pyramid of Menkaure, Khufu's grandson, which is the smallest of the three. Together, the three pyramids of Giza form one of the most recognizable skylines on Earth. Khufu's pyramid is particularly interesting. It retains a cap of original casing stones at its very apex, a smooth, white remnant of the polished surface that once covered the entire structure. On clear days, you can see it gleaming in the sunlight, a ghost of the pyramid's former glory. It is the last substantial remnant of the casing on any of the Giza pyramids, and it gives you just a hint, just a suggestion, of how magnificent these structures must have looked when they were new. Menkaure's pyramid, the smallest of the three, was partly sheathed in red granite from Aswan, not the white limestone of the other two. Red granite, dark and heavy and polished to a mirror finish. Imagine the effect: two white pyramids gleaming like snow, and a third, darker, richer, glowing deep red in the sunset light. The complex must have been breathtaking, an entire landscape of precision-built stone, pyramids and temples and causeways and walls, all aligned, all planned, all immaculate. Nothing like it existed anywhere else in the world. Nothing like it would exist again for thousands of years. And at the eastern edge of the complex, crouching in the sand like a guardian, is the Great Sphinx. The Sphinx is carved from a single outcrop of limestone bedrock. It has the body of a lion and the face of a man, almost certainly Khufu himself. It is about 73 meters long and 20 meters high. Its paws stretch forward into the sand. Its gaze is fixed, eternally, toward the rising sun. The Sphinx is older than it looks. The limestone has been eroded by wind and sand, and possibly by water. Some geologists have argued that the pattern of erosion suggests the Sphinx may be even older than the pyramids, dating to a period when the climate was wetter. This is a controversial claim, and most Egyptologists reject it, but the debate continues. What is not debated is the power of the image. The pyramids and the Sphinx together, silhouetted against the desert sky, form a tableau that has captivated the human imagination for millennia. Let us return to the question, of who built the pyramid. For centuries, the popular answer was slaves. This idea was reinforced by Herodotus, who described 100,000 men being forced to work in 3-month shifts. It was reinforced by the Bible, which describes the Israelites laboring under the pharaohs, and it was reinforced by Hollywood, which gave us images of whip-cracking overseers and miserable, shackled workers dragging stones under the blazing sun. But the archaeological evidence tells a very different story. In 1990, a tourist on horseback stumbled over a low mud brick wall near the pyramids. This chance discovery led to one of the most important excavations in modern Egyptology. What the archaeologists found, under the direction of Dr. Mark Lehner and Dr. Zahi Hawass, was a workers' village, a planned settlement built specifically to house the people who constructed the pyramids. And these people were not slaves. They were organized laborers, skilled craftsmen, farmers who came to work during the flood season when the Nile covered their fields and there was no agricultural work to be done. They came in rotating teams, and they were fed, housed, and cared for by the state. The evidence is remarkable. The village contained bakeries capable of producing thousands of loaves of bread per day. It contained breweries because beer was a staple of the Egyptian diet. It contained fish processing facilities. It contained granaries. The workers ate beef, which was expensive and reserved for the wealthy. They ate fish and poultry. They drank beer. Their diet was better than that of many ordinary Egyptians. There were medical facilities. Bones have been found that show evidence of fractures that were set and healed. One skeleton showed a leg that had been amputated, and the man had survived. He had lived for years after the surgery. This was not the treatment given to disposable slaves. This was the treatment given to valued workers. The laborers were organized into teams with names like Friends of Khufu and Drunkards of Menkora. These names were painted on the blocks they placed, a kind of graffiti, a mark of pride. You can still see them today, hidden inside the pyramid, on the rough surfaces of the core blocks that were never meant to be seen. The workers were proud of what they were building. They knew they were creating something extraordinary. The construction of the Great Pyramid was one of the largest organized projects in the ancient world. At its peak, it is estimated that between 20 and 30,000 workers were involved, not all of them at the same time. The permanent workforce, the skilled stone cutters, masons, surveyors, and engineers, may have numbered around 5,000. The rest were seasonal laborers, arriving during the flood months and returning to their farms when the waters receded. The organization required to coordinate all of this is staggering. Think about it: thousands of workers, multiple quarries, a constant supply of food, water, and tools, medical care, housing, a clear chain of command, a precise construction plan that had to be followed year after year, over 2 decades, without significant error. This was not brute force. This was engineering, management, logistics. It was the work of a civilization at the peak of its organizational capability. And at the center of it all was the pharaoh. Khufu reigned for approximately 23 years, and for most of that time, the pyramid was being built. We do not know when he first saw the completed structure. We do not know if he stood on the plateau and looked up at the gleaming white limestone and the golden capstone. and felt satisfaction or simply relief that it was done. We do not know the exact year of his death, somewhere around 2566 BC, give or take. But we can imagine the funeral. The pharaoh's body, mummified over 70 days of elaborate ritual, wrapped in fine linen, adorned with amulets of gold and precious stone, placed in a wooden coffin, and then in the granite sarcophagus. The priests would have performed the opening of the mouth ceremony, a ritual believed to restore the senses of the dead, allowing the pharaoh to see and hear and breathe in the afterlife. The burial chamber would have been filled with everything the pharaoh would need: furniture, clothing, food, wine, tools, weapons, games, jewelry, statues of servants who would come to life in the afterlife and serve him. Then the workers would have retreated down the grand gallery for the last time. The massive granite plugs, 3 of them, each weighing tons, were released. They slid down the ascending passage under their own weight, sealing the entrance to the upper chambers. The workers who released the plugs could not go back up. They escaped through a narrow shaft, barely wide enough for a man to squeeze through, that connected the bottom of the grand gallery to the descending passage. This escape shaft was then concealed. The entrance on the northern face was sealed with a casing stone, identical to all the others, indistinguishable, invisible. And the pyramid was complete. From the outside, it was a perfect, smooth, white mountain of stone. No doors, no windows, no visible entrance. Nothing to suggest that deep inside, in a chamber of polished granite, a king lay sleeping. The pyramid was left to do its work, to protect the pharaoh's body, to launch his soul into the sky, to stand as a monument to his reign for all eternity. For a while, it did exactly that. But eternity is a long time, and the world is not always kind to monuments. Within a few centuries of Khufu's death, the political and economic power of the Old Kingdom began to decline. The pharaohs who followed built smaller and less impressive pyramids. The centralized state weakened, regional governors gained power, the climate changed, harvests failed. And the tombs of the pharaohs, those magnificent treasure houses, became targets. The tomb robbers came. We do not know exactly when the Great Pyramid was first broken into. It may have happened during the chaos of the First Intermediate Period, around 2180 BC, when central authority collapsed and Egypt descended into a century of instability. For nearly a century, there was no strong central government, no pharaoh powerful enough to protect the old tombs. The necropolis guards were no longer paid, the priests abandoned their posts, and the tombs, with their known treasures, were sitting there, unprotected. It must have been terrifying for the tomb robbers, crawling through dark passages in the dead of night, the weight of the pyramid above them, the fear of curses, of divine retribution, of being caught. But the lure of gold is a powerful thing, and desperation, in a time of famine and chaos, is more powerful still. What we know is that by the time Arab explorers entered the pyramid in the 9th century AD, the king's chamber was empty. The sarcophagus had no lid. Whatever had been inside was gone. The granite plugs that sealed the ascending passage, those massive blocks that were supposed to prevent entry forever, had been bypassed. The robbers had simply tunneled around them, cutting through the softer limestone of the surrounding structure, creating a new passage that avoided the blockage entirely. It was crude, it was effective, and it meant that everything the pyramid had been designed to protect, the pharaoh's mummy, the canopic jars with his preserved organs, the golden death mask, the jewelry, the amulets, the sacred texts, the food and wine and furniture for the afterlife, all of it was lost. We will never know what the king's chamber looked like when it was full. We can only imagine, based on what was found in the tomb of Tutankhamun, the only pharaoh's tomb ever discovered virtually intact. And Tutankhamun was a minor king, a teenager. His tomb was small and relatively modest. Khufu was one of the most powerful pharaohs who ever lived. His burial treasures must have been extraordinary beyond imagination. And they are gone, melted down, scattered, destroyed, lost to the greed and desperation of people who lived in a time we can barely reconstruct. It is one of the great tragedies of archaeology. But here is the extraordinary thing: the pyramid survived. The tomb robbers took the treasures, but they could not take the tomb. The gold was portable. The stone was not. 2.3 million blocks of limestone and granite, held together by nothing but their own weight and the precision of their fitting, were beyond the reach of any thief. The pyramid was designed to last forever, and in that, if in nothing else, it succeeded. The centuries passed, dynasties rose and fell. The New Kingdom pharaohs, Hatshepsut and Thutmose and Rameses, abandoned the pyramid form entirely. They buried their dead in the Valley of the Kings, in tombs cut deep into the rock, hidden and disguised. They had learned the lesson of the pyramids. A monument that announces its presence to the world also announces the location of its treasures. But the pyramids at Giza remained. They were too big to ignore, too big to tear down, too big to repurpose. They simply endured. Egypt was conquered by the Persians in 525 BC, then by Alexander the Great in 332 BC. Alexander founded the city of Alexandria on the Mediterranean coast, and Egypt became part of the Greek-speaking world. The Ptolemaic dynasty, Greek pharaohs ruling an Egyptian kingdom, lasted for nearly 3 centuries. Cleopatra, the last of the Ptolemies, would have known the pyramids. They were already more than 2,000 years old when she lived. Imagine that. Cleopatra is closer to us in time than she was to the builders of the Great Pyramid. Then came the Romans. Egypt became a province of Rome in 30 BC after Cleopatra's death. Roman tourists visited the pyramids. They scratched graffiti on the stones. They marveled. They speculated. They had no idea who had built them, or how, or when. The old gods faded. Christianity spread through Egypt. The temples were converted to churches or abandoned. The hieroglyphs, that intricate system of writing that had recorded 3,000 years of history, became unreadable. The last known hieroglyphic inscription was carved in AD 394 at the Temple of Philae on an island in the Nile. After that, silence. The writing of the pharaohs became a mystery. Then came Islam. Arab armies conquered Egypt in AD 641. The new rulers were fascinated by the pyramids. They called them Al-Ahram, the pyramids, and they told stories about them. Stories about hidden treasures, about curses, about magical traps. In AD 820, the Abbasid Caliph Al-Ma'mun ordered his men to break into the Great Pyramid. They couldn't find the original entrance, which was hidden beneath the smooth casing stones, So they picked a spot on the northern face and began to tunnel. They hacked through the limestone with iron tools and fire, heating the stone and then dousing it with vinegar to make it crack. After months of tunneling, they broke through into the descending passage. They followed it down and found the subterranean chamber, empty. They found the ascending passage, blocked by the granite plugs. They tunneled around them. They found the grand gallery. They found the king's chamber. Empty. The sarcophagus had no lid. Whatever had been inside was long gone. The tomb robbers had been there first, perhaps 2,000 years before Al-Mamun. The caliph and his men found no treasure, no gold, no jewels, nothing but empty stone chambers and the echoing silence of the ages. But the tunnel they cut, Al-Mamun's hole, is still there today. It is, in fact, the entrance that most modern visitors use to enter the pyramid. The irony is considerable. The original entrance, Khufu's entrance, designed to be sealed forever, is now a tourist attraction. The casing stones, those beautiful white limestone blocks that had once given the pyramid its smooth, gleaming surface, were stripped away over the centuries. Much of the stripping happened after a devastating earthquake in 1303, which loosened many of the stones and made them easier to remove. The Bahri Mamluk Sultan an-Nasir Nasir ad-Din al-Hassan ordered the fallen stones to be carted away and used them to build mosques and fortifications in Cairo. The Al-Azhar Mosque, the citadel of Saladin, the very city that grew up beside the pyramids, was partly built from the pyramids themselves. It took centuries for the stripping to be completed, but by the 16th or 17th century, the pyramid had been reduced to the rough, stepped core we see today, a mountain of weathered yellowish limestone, missing its smooth white skin and its golden capstone. But even stripped, even weathered, even diminished, it remained the most impressive structure on the plateau, and travelers from across the world continued to come and to stare and to wonder. In 1798, a young French general named Napoleon Bonaparte arrived in Egypt. Napoleon's campaign was military in purpose, but it was accompanied by something unprecedented. He brought with him not just soldiers, but scholars, scientists, artists, engineers, 167 of them. Their mission was to study Egypt, to document its monuments, to measure and draw and catalogue everything they found. It was the beginning of modern Egyptology. Napoleon himself visited the pyramids. There is a famous story, probably apocryphal, that he asked to be left alone inside the king's chamber, that he spent a night there, in the darkness, in the silence, deep inside the pyramid. When he emerged the next morning, he was pale and shaken. His officers asked him what had happened, what had he seen. Napoleon refused to say. He told them never to mention it again, and he never spoke of it for the rest of his life. The story is almost certainly a later invention. There is no contemporary account of it. Napoleon's secretary, Louis-Antoine Fauvelet de Bourrienne, who accompanied him throughout the Egyptian campaign, never mentioned it, and Bourrienne recorded almost everything. But the story persists. It persists because it captures something real about the power of the pyramid, about what it feels like to stand inside that ancient stone chamber in the darkness, surrounded by stone on every side, with the weight of 6 million tons pressing down above you, and to feel the silence. A silence so complete, so absolute, that you can hear your own blood moving through your veins. Napoleon may never have spent a night inside the pyramid, but the idea that he did, and that the experience shook him, tells us something about how the pyramid affects the human imagination. It is not just a building, it is a presence, a force, something that reaches into you and touches something very old and very deep. The scholars who accompanied Napoleon did extraordinary work. They produced a monumental publication, the Description de l'Egypte, 23 volumes of engravings, maps, and descriptions that introduced the monuments of Egypt to the European world. But it was the discovery of a single stone, found by a French soldier digging a fortification near the town of Rosetta, that would change everything. The Rosetta Stone, a slab of granodiorite inscribed with the same text in 3 scripts: Greek, Demotic, and hieroglyphics. It took another 2 decades, but in 1822, a young French scholar named Jean-François Champollion used the Rosetta Stone to crack the code of Egyptian hieroglyphics. For the first time in more than 1,000 years, the ancient texts could be read. The pyramids were no longer silent, they could speak. But not everyone who came to the pyramids came with scholarly intentions. In 1837, a British Army officer named Colonel Richard William Howard Vyse arrived at Giza with a single-minded determination to find hidden chambers inside the Great Pyramid. Vyse was not a careful archaeologist. He was impatient, he was aggressive, and he had access to something that previous explorers had not: gunpowder. When his workers could not find passages through the stone, Vyse simply blasted his way through. He used dynamite charges to open up the relieving chambers above the king's chamber, chambers that had been sealed since the pyramid was built. Inside the uppermost of these chambers, Vyse found something remarkable: red ochre markings on the rough stone walls, quarry marks, work gang names, and among them, a cartouche, a royal name: Khufu. It was the first direct evidence linking the Great Pyramid to its builder. The name of the pharaoh, painted in red ink by a work gang 4,500 years ago, on a surface that was never meant to be seen by human eyes. Some have questioned the authenticity of these markings. A few have accused Vyse of forging them, but the weight of evidence, including the style of the hieroglyphs, the grammar of the inscriptions, and the fact that some of the marks extend behind blocks that cannot be moved, strongly supports their authenticity. Khufu built the Great Pyramid. The markings confirmed what tradition had always said. The 19th century brought more explorers, more measurements, more theories. In 1880, a young British surveyor named William Matthew Flinders Petrie arrived at Giza with a theodolite, a measuring tape, and an obsessive dedication to precision. Petrie spent 2 years at the pyramids. He measured everything, every block, every angle, every corridor. His measurements were so precise that many of them are still used as the standard reference today, 140 years later. Petrie's work revealed the astonishing accuracy of the pyramid's construction. He was the one who first documented the 2-centimeter levelness of the base. He was the one who measured the alignment to the cardinal points. He was the one who established, beyond any reasonable doubt, that the Great Pyramid was not a rough pile of stones, but a structure of extraordinary mathematical precision. Petrie went on to become one of the founders of modern Egyptology. He developed systematic excavation techniques. He insisted on recording everything, even the smallest pottery shard. He transformed archaeology from treasure hunting into science. And it all began with the pyramids. Between the age of Vyse and the age of Petrie, the pyramid continued to draw visitors, writers, artists, photographers, soldiers, diplomats. Anyone who could make the journey to Egypt felt compelled to visit the pyramids. It was an obligatory stop on the Grand Tour, the extended trip through Europe and the Mediterranean that wealthy young men undertook as part of their education. Mark Twain visited in 1867. He described trying to climb the pyramid and being hauled up by hired Arab guides who grabbed his arms and legs and practically carried him. He wrote about it with his characteristic humor, but beneath the jokes, you can sense his genuine amazement at the scale of the thing. Gustave Flaubert visited in 1849. He spent a night on top of the pyramid, watching the sunrise. He wrote to his mother about the silence, the vast emptiness, the feeling of being suspended between earth and sky. Florence Nightingale visited in 1849, the same year as Flaubert. She described the pyramids as looking like they had been there since the beginning of the world and would be there at its end. Each visitor brought their own eyes, their own sensibility, their own moment in history, and each one, in their own way, was overwhelmed. The pyramid does that. It overwhelms, not with beauty, although it has a severe geometric beauty that grows on you, not with decoration, it has none, but with sheer, unanswerable presence. It is simply there, and it is simply vast, and there is nothing you can say about it that quite matches the experience of standing at its base and looking up. The 20th century brought new technologies and new discoveries. In 1954, an Egyptian archaeologist named Kamel el-Malak was excavating near the southern face of the Great Pyramid when he noticed a line of limestone blocks arranged in a suspicious pattern. He carefully removed them and found a sealed pit. Inside the pit, dismantled and stacked with extraordinary care, was a boat. A full-sized wooden boat, 43 meters long, built of Lebanese cedar, with oars, with a cabin, with ropes still in their fittings. It had been sealed inside the pit for 4,500 years. The wood was still in remarkable condition, preserved by the dry desert air and the airtight seal of the chamber. The boat was painstakingly reassembled over the course of 14 years. It is now displayed in a museum built directly over the pit where it was found, at the base of the Great Pyramid. What was the boat for? It may have been a funerary boat, intended to carry Khufu's soul across the celestial waters of the sky, or it may have been a real boat, one that Khufu used in life, perhaps the very vessel that carried his body to the pyramid for burial. A second boat pit was found nearby. It was opened in 2011 and contained another dismantled vessel, in poorer condition than the first, but still remarkably preserved. These boats are haunting objects. They remind you that the people who built the pyramids were not abstract figures in a textbook. They were real people who sailed on real rivers, who worked with real wood and real rope, who lived and breathed and died under the same sky that you see tonight. There is another mystery hidden within the pyramid that we should visit before we go on: the shafts. Both the king's chamber and the queen's chamber have narrow shafts, about 20 centimeters square, that extend upward into the body of the pyramid. For a long time, these were called air shafts, ventilation channels, a practical feature to keep the chambers breathable. But the shafts in the king's chamber, the two that have been fully explored, do something remarkable. They point toward the sky. One points roughly toward the northern sky, toward the area where the circumpolar stars, the imperishables, wheel around the celestial pole. The other points south, toward the belt of Orion. In Egyptian mythology, Orion was associated with Osiris, the god of the dead, the ruler of the underworld. The circumpolar stars were the destination of the pharaoh's immortal soul. Were these shafts designed as pathways for Khufu's spirit? Were they symbolic corridors, connecting the burial chamber to the stars themselves? The Belgian engineer Robert Bouvel proposed exactly this in 1989. His Orion correlation theory suggested that the three pyramids of Giza were laid out to mirror the three stars of Orion's belt, the two larger pyramids corresponding to the two brighter stars, Al-Nitak and Al-Nilam, the smaller pyramid of Menkora corresponding to the fainter star, Mintaka, even the slight offset of the smallest pyramid mirrored the slight offset of Mintaka from the line formed by the other two stars. The theory is controversial. Many Egyptologists have pointed out that the correlation is not as precise as Bouvel claimed, and that the Egyptians may not have intended any such alignment. Others have noted that you can find patterns in almost anything if you look hard enough. But the shafts remain, and they do point toward the sky, and the Egyptians did have a profound connection to the stars. Whatever the truth of the correlation theory, the relationship between the pyramid and the heavens, between the stone and the sky, was not accidental. The pyramid was built to bridge the gap between Earth and eternity. Everything about it, from its orientation to its internal geometry to these narrow, sky-pointing shafts, served that purpose. It was, in the truest sense, a stairway to the stars. Let us also speak of Khufu's mother. In 1925, an American archaeologist named George Reisner was working near the Great Pyramid when a photographer's tripod leg slipped into a patch of plaster hidden beneath the sand. Investigation revealed a sealed shaft, plunging 27 meters straight down into the bedrock. At the bottom, Reisner found a tomb, undisturbed, the first unlooted royal burial of the Old Kingdom ever discovered. It was the tomb of Queen Hetepheres, the mother of Khufu. The chamber contained a beautiful alabaster sarcophagus, sealed and intact, golden furniture, jewelry of gold and carnelian and turquoise, copper tools, pottery, canopic jars containing the queen's preserved organs. But when the sarcophagus was opened, with great ceremony and anticipation, it was empty, no mummy. The mystery has never been satisfactorily explained. One theory is that Hetepheres was originally buried elsewhere, perhaps at Darsha near her husband Sneferu's pyramid, and that her tomb was robbed. Khufu, furious and grief-stricken, may have ordered her burial equipment to be moved to Giza, but the priests may have concealed the fact that the mummy itself had been destroyed or stolen. It is a poignant story, a son trying to protect his mother even in death. A cover-up, 4,500 years old, a sealed sarcophagus with nothing inside, a beautiful golden cage with no bird. The golden furniture is now in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. The chair, the bed frame, the canopy poles, each piece is exquisite, delicate gold leaf over wood, decorated with papyrus and lotus motifs. They are among the oldest surviving pieces of furniture in the world. And they remind us, once again, that behind these massive stone structures were human beings, families, mothers and sons, people who loved and grieved and tried to hold on to what they had lost. Let us talk about the casing stones. When the Great Pyramid was new, it did not look the way it does today. It was not a rough, stepped mountain of yellowish limestone. It was smooth, perfectly smooth, covered from base to apex with polished white limestone from the quarries at Tura. The joints between the blocks were so tight, so perfectly fitted, that the Greek geographer Strabo remarked that you could not insert even a hair between them. And at the very top, crowning the apex, was a pyramidion, a capstone possibly covered in gold or electrum, a natural alloy of gold and silver that was highly prized in ancient Egypt. Imagine it. A perfect white pyramid gleaming in the Egyptian sun, the light hitting its polished surface and reflecting outward, visible for miles, a beacon, a monument, a man-made mountain of light. At sunset, the pyramid would have glowed with warm golden fire. At sunrise, it would have blazed white against the pink sky. On moonlit nights, like tonight, it would have shimmered silver, ethereal, otherworldly. The Egyptians called it Akhit Khufu, the horizon of Khufu. And that name tells you everything about what they intended. A horizon is where the earth meets the sky, where the mortal world touches the divine. The pyramid was the place where Khufu, in death, crossed from one to the other. Most of the casing stones are gone now, stripped over the centuries, but a few remain at the very base of the pyramid on the northern face. If you visit Giza today, you can see them, smooth, white, still fitted together with the precision that astounded Strabo 2,000 years ago. They are a fragment of what once was, but even a fragment is enough to take your breath away. And then, in 2017, something happened that no one expected. An international team of physicists, working under a project called ScanPyramids, used a technique called muon tomography to peer inside the Great Pyramid without drilling a single hole. Muons are subatomic particles produced when cosmic rays from deep space collide with atoms in the Earth's atmosphere. They rain down on us constantly, millions of them passing through your body every minute. They pass through solid matter, but they are slightly deflected by dense materials, like stone. By placing sensitive muon detectors inside the known chambers of the pyramid and measuring how many muons arrived from different directions, the scientists could create a kind of X-ray image of the pyramid's interior. And what they found was a void. A large void, at least 30 meters long, located directly above the Grand Gallery, previously unknown, never documented, never explored. The announcement made headlines around the world. What was this void? Was it a chamber, a passage, a structural feature? Was it filled with air or rubble or treasures? We still don't know, as of now, the void has not been physically entered. The ScanPyramids team has proposed using small robots to explore it, but the Egyptian authorities have been cautious. The pyramid is fragile. Any intervention carries risk. And so the void remains, a mystery inside a mystery, a secret that the Great Pyramid has kept for 4,500 years and is not yet ready to reveal. In 2023, the ScanPyramids team announced another discovery, a corridor about 9 meters long and 2 meters wide, located behind the chevron-shaped stones above the original entrance on the northern face. This corridor, dubbed the North Face Corridor, was confirmed using both muon tomography and a tiny endoscopic camera inserted through a small gap between the stones. The camera revealed a roughly cut passage with a corbelled ceiling leading to what appears to be a dead end, or perhaps to something more. The exploration is ongoing. Each new discovery raises more questions than it answers. The Great Pyramid, after 4,500 years of study, is still revealing its secrets, one hidden passage at a time, one subatomic particle at a time. It is a humbling thought that something so massive, so thoroughly studied, so endlessly photographed and measured and analyzed, can still surprise us, that there are rooms inside it that no human eye has ever seen, corridors that no foot has ever walked. The pyramid keeps its counsel. It reveals what it chooses when it chooses, and it is in no hurry. Let us talk about the pyramid in the modern world. Today, the Great Pyramid stands at the southwestern edge of the Cairo metropolitan area. The city has grown, decade by decade, until its apartment blocks and shops and roads press almost to the edge of the Giza Plateau. From the top of the pyramid, if you were allowed to climb it, which you are not, you would see one of the most extraordinary contrasts on Earth. To the east, the vast, chaotic, teeming city of Cairo, 20 million people, honking horns, satellite dishes, neon signs. To the west, nothing, empty desert, stretching to the horizon, stretching to Libya, stretching to the Sahara. The pyramid sits on the boundary between the city and the desert, between the modern and the ancient, between the living and the dead. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, one of the most visited archaeological sites on Earth. Millions of tourists come every year. They ride camels, they take photographs, they stand at the base and tilt their heads back and try to comprehend the scale of the thing above them. And most of them, if they are honest, fail. The pyramid defeats comprehension. It is simply too big, too old, too present. The mind reaches for it and cannot quite get hold. In 2022, researchers published a remarkable discovery using satellite imagery and soil core samples. They identified the remnants of a long-lost branch of the Nile that once flowed much closer to the Giza Plateau than the river does today. This branch, called the Ahramat Branch, the branch of the pyramids, ran along the western edge of the Nile floodplain, close to the base of the plateau. It would have provided a direct water route from the main river to the pyramid construction site. This answered a question that had puzzled Egyptologists for decades. How were the heavy stones, particularly the granite from Aswan and the fine limestone from Tura, transporting to the plateau? The modern Nile is 8 kilometers from the pyramids, but 4,500 years ago, the river was much closer, perhaps within a few hundred meters. The builders could have sailed their stone barges right up to the foot of the plateau. No long overland haul required, just a short trip from the riverbank to the construction ramps. The discovery of the Ahramat Branch is one of those findings that makes the impossible seem merely extraordinary. The logistics of building the pyramid were always the hardest thing to explain, but with a river at your doorstep, the problem becomes manageable, difficult, but manageable. The Nile, once again, made everything possible. Some visitors are disappointed. They expected something more, something dramatic, something that matched the epic images they had seen in films and books. Instead, they find a large pile of yellowish stone, surrounded by tourist buses and souvenir sellers and persistent guides. But others, the ones who stay a little longer, the ones who come back at sunset, or at dawn, or at night, the ones who sit quietly and simply look. They feel it. The weight of time, the patience of stone, the vast, quiet, almost unbearable dignity of a thing that has endured for 45 centuries. And they understand why it is the last surviving wonder of the world. There is a tradition among Egyptologists, a kind of professional hazing, that every new student must attempt to explain how the Great Pyramid was built, and every explanation, no matter how clever, no matter how well researched, is ultimately humbled by the sheer scale of the achievement. Because the truth is, the Great Pyramid was not built by any single technique. It was built by an entire civilization. It was built by a people who had spent centuries developing their skills in stoneworking and surveying and logistics and administration. It was built by a state that could command the resources of an entire river valley, the richest in the ancient world. It was built by a culture that believed, with absolute conviction, that the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife was the most important thing in the universe. You cannot separate the pyramid from the civilization that built it. It is not a trick or a puzzle or a challenge to be solved by a single clever theory. It is the product of everything the Old Kingdom Egyptians were: their skills, their beliefs, their organization, their determination. It is the stone embodiment of an entire way of life. And that, perhaps, is the most remarkable thing about it. Of course, the pyramid has attracted more than its share of unusual theories over the centuries, and while we should treat these with skepticism, they are worth mentioning because they tell us something not about the pyramid, but about ourselves. There are those who believe the pyramid was built by a lost civilization. Atlantis, perhaps, a culture with advanced technology that was destroyed in some catastrophe, leaving only the pyramid as evidence of its existence. There are those who believe it was built by extraterrestrials, that the precision of its construction and the scale of its ambition could not have been achieved by human beings with Bronze Age tools, that it must have required intervention from beyond Earth. There are those who believe the pyramid is a power plant, an energy device, a giant machine designed to harness some unknown force, perhaps related to the Earth's magnetic field or to the properties of the limestone itself. And there are those who believe it encodes advanced mathematical and astronomical knowledge, the value of pi, the speed of light, the dimensions of the Earth. These theories are, with respect, not supported by the evidence. The pyramid was built by human beings, Egyptian human beings, using the tools and knowledge of their time, We know this because we have found their tools, their workers' villages, their quarry marks, their administrative records, their supply lists, their medical facilities, their bread ovens, and their beer breweries. The evidence is not mysterious. It is extensive, detailed, and mundane. It tells the story of a massive, well-organized construction project carried out by a wealthy and capable state over the course of 20 years. But the persistence of the alternative theories tells us something important. It tells us that we find it difficult to believe that ancient people were as clever as we are. That people without computers and cranes and GPS could achieve something that still amazes us today. And that difficulty, that failure of imagination, is a failure on our part, not theirs. The Egyptians of the 4th dynasty were brilliant. They were organized, they were determined, and they built something that has outlasted every other structure of its era by thousands of years. They deserve the credit. There is one more thing worth saying about the theories, about why the pyramid attracts them. It is because the pyramid is silent. It does not explain itself. It carries no inscription on its outer walls, no carved relief telling the story of its construction, no hieroglyphic text proclaiming the glory of its builder. The casing stones were blank. The core blocks are unmarked, except for those hidden quarry marks that Vyse found. The pyramid speaks through its presence alone, through its mass, through its geometry, through its sheer, overwhelming physicality. And into that silence, we project our own stories, our own fears, our own hopes, our own ideas about what is possible and what is not. The pyramid is a mirror. It reflects back whatever you bring to it. If you bring wonder, you see wonder. If you bring suspicion, you see conspiracy. If you bring reverence, you see the sacred. And if you bring stillness, you find stillness, which is what we are looking for tonight. Let us take a breath. Let the silence settle around us for a moment. Because we have been deep inside the pyramid and deep inside the history, and it is time to step back, to look up, to see the pyramid again from the outside as a thing in the world, a thing in the landscape, a thing in time. The Great Pyramid is the last surviving wonder of the ancient world. Think about that. The list of the 7 wonders was compiled by Greek travelers and scholars, starting around the 3rd century BC. It was a kind of tourist guide for the ancient world, a list of the most impressive things you could see if you had the time and the means to travel. There were 7 wonders. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, terraced gardens rising above the Mesopotamian plains, watered by an ingenious irrigation system, if they existed at all. Some scholars doubt they were ever built. No archaeological evidence has ever been found. The statue of Zeus at Olympia, a seated figure 12 meters tall, made of ivory and gold, by the sculptor Phidias. It was moved to Constantinople and destroyed in a fire in the 5th century AD. The Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, one of the largest temples in the ancient world, rebuilt twice after destruction, finally destroyed by a Gothic mob in AD 262. Only a single column remains standing today. The Mausoleum at Halicarnassus, the enormous tomb of the Persian satrap Mausolus, from which we get the word mausoleum, damaged by earthquakes, dismantled by Crusader knights who used the stone to build a castle. The Colossus of Rhodes, a bronze statue of the sun god Helios, standing over 30 meters tall at the entrance to the harbor. It stood for only 56 years before an earthquake brought it down in 226 BC. The wreckage lay on the ground for 8 centuries before Arab invaders sold it for scrap. The lighthouse of Alexandria, the Pharos, one of the tallest structures in the ancient world, a beacon visible from 50 kilometers out to sea, damaged by earthquakes over the centuries, it finally collapsed completely in the 14th century. Its foundations now lie beneath a medieval fort. All gone, destroyed by earthquakes, by fire, by war, by neglect, by the slow, patient, relentless erosion of time. Only the pyramid remains. The oldest of the 7 wonders, the first to be built, and the only one still standing. It was ancient when the other 6 were constructed, and it has outlasted every one of them. And it does not remain as a ruin. It does not remain as a foundation or a footprint or a few scattered stones in a field. It remains as a pyramid, complete, massive, undeniable. It has survived everything that 4.5 millennia of history have thrown at it. Invasions, earthquakes, the stripping of its casing stones, the tunneling of tomb robbers, the dynamite of Colonel Vyse, the pollution of modern Cairo, the feet of millions of tourists. And it is still here, still standing on the same spot where Khufu's architects chose to place it 20 centuries before the birth of Christ, still aligned to the same stars, still casting the same shadow. There is something almost unbearable about that, something that goes beyond admiration or wonder or even awe. It is closer to vertigo, the dizziness you feel when you try to comprehend a span of time that the human mind was never designed to grasp. As the night deepens over the desert and the stars wheel slowly overhead, let us think about what the pyramid means. Not what it meant to Khufu, not what it meant to the Egyptians, but what it means to us. It is, first and foremost, a monument to human capability, to what we can achieve when we organize ourselves, when we apply our intelligence and our labor to a single, focused goal. The pyramid was built by people who had no iron tools, no wheeled vehicles, no pulleys or cranes in the modern sense. They had copper, they had stone, they had wood, they had rope, and they had each other. 20,000 people working together for 20 years, and they built something that has lasted longer than almost anything else on Earth. That is not a story about the power of kings. It is a story about the power of cooperation, of shared purpose, of the extraordinary things that human beings can accomplish when they decide to try. Think of the rope maker, twisting fibers into cordage strong enough to move mountains. Think of the surveyor, sighting along the stars to find true north. Think of the mason, shaving a limestone block until it fit against its neighbor so tightly that not even a knife blade could slip between them. Think of the cook, baking thousands of loaves of bread each day to keep the whole enterprise fed. None of them individually built the pyramid, all of them together built the pyramid. And that is a thought worth holding onto, especially on a night like this, when the world can feel overwhelming and the problems can feel too large, and your own contribution can feel too small. The pyramid was built one block at a time, by one person at a time, over 20 years, and it became the most enduring structure on Earth. It is also a monument to the human relationship with death and with time. Every civilization builds monuments, temples, palaces, towers, walls. We build them because we want to leave a mark, because we know, somewhere deep in our consciousness, that we are temporary, that our lives are brief, that the world will go on without us. And so we build things that will outlast us, things that will stand after we are gone, things that will say to the future, we were here. The Egyptians understood this more deeply than almost anyone. Their entire civilization was, in a sense, an elaborate negotiation with death. The mummification, the tomb paintings, the Book of the Dead, the pyramids, all of it was an attempt to extend the self beyond the boundary of mortality. And in a way, they succeeded. Khufu's body is gone, his treasures are gone, his name is barely remembered outside of the history books, but his pyramid, his horizon, is still here, still visible, still speaking to anyone who stands before it. He wanted to touch the sky, and in a way, he did. There is a quality to the Egyptian night that you find nowhere else. The air is warm and dry, the stars are brilliant, undimmed by moisture or cloud. The desert stretches outward in every direction, flat and featureless, until it meets the sky. And the pyramids, those dark triangular shapes against the stars, seem to glow with a faint warmth of their own, as if the stone still holds some memory of the sun. If you sit quietly on the sand at a distance and simply look at them, you begin to understand why the ancients considered them sacred, why generation after generation, for thousands of years, people came to this plateau and felt something shift inside them. It is not just the size, not just the age, not just the precision. It is the silence. The pyramid does not speak. It does not explain itself. It does not argue or persuade or justify. It simply is. And in that silence, in that massive, patient, 4,500-year-old silence, you hear something that the modern world rarely lets you hear. A stillness. The kind of stillness that exists at the bottom of the ocean, in the center of a mountain, in the space between heartbeats. The kind of stillness that you feel sometimes just before sleep, when the last thought of the day dissolves and the first dream has not yet formed, and there is nothing, just quiet, just being, just the gentle, rhythmic miracle of breathing. The pyramid knows this stillness. It has known it for 45 centuries. It has held it like a cupped hand holding water all this time. And tonight, if you let it, it will share it with you. The ancient Egyptians had a word, Hotep. It meant something like peace or satisfaction or the state of being at rest. It appeared in many royal names, Amenhotep, Neferhotep, Hetepheres. It was the quality they most desired for the dead, that the pharaoh should be Hotep, at peace, at rest, satisfied, complete. The pyramid was designed to create this state, to provide a place of such perfect protection, such absolute stillness, that the pharaoh's soul could rest undisturbed for all eternity. And in a way, despite the tomb robbers, despite the empty sarcophagus, despite the gunpowder and the tourists and the centuries of plunder, the pyramid still holds that quality. It is still, profoundly, a place of rest. You can feel it when you stand inside the king's chamber. The world outside disappears. The noise of Cairo, the honking horns, the tourist chatter, all of it falls away. The stone walls close around you, not threatening, but sheltering, like being inside the earth, like being held. And in the silence, you hear your own breathing, your own heartbeat, the oldest sounds in the world. Hotep, Vyse. The workers who built the pyramid knew something about this silence. They did not leave diaries, they did not write memoirs, but they left marks, painted marks on the hidden faces of the blocks they hauled and fitted, work gang names, tallies, messages to each other, and perhaps to the future. One mark found deep inside the pyramid reads simply, "The Gang of the King." Another reads, "The Friends of Khufu." These were not slaves. These were people who identified with their work, who took pride in it, who wanted to be remembered, even if only by a splash of red paint on a stone that no one would see for 4,000 years. And here we are, seeing it, reading it, remembering them. As we near the end of our story, let us return to the plateau one last time. The moon has risen higher now. The shadows of the pyramids stretch long across the sand, dark and sharp-edged. The Sphinx crouches in its eternal vigil, its face worn smooth by time and wind. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks. The lights of Cairo twinkle on the horizon. A car horn sounds, faintly, impossibly far away. But here, at the foot of the pyramid, there is only the night, and the stone, and the stars. The Great Pyramid has watched over this landscape for 45 centuries. It has seen the rise and fall of empires. It has seen the river change its course. It has seen the desert advance and retreat. It has seen conquerors come and go, Greeks and Romans and Arabs and Turks and French and British, each one passing through like a shadow across the sand. And it has remained. Not because it was lucky, not because it was hidden, but because it was built to last. Because the people who created it understood something fundamental about stone and geometry and the patient, relentless passage of time. They built for eternity. And eternity, it seems, has accepted the offering. We have spent a long time together tonight, walked through centuries, descended into chambers, stood in the shadow of something almost incomprehensibly old. And now the story is told. The desert is quiet. The stars are wheeling slowly toward dawn. Let the weight of the pyramid settle over you now, not as a burden, but as a blanket, a vast, warm, ancient blanket of stone and story and silence. The pharaoh sleeps. The workers sleep. The Sphinx keeps watch with its broken nose and its patient eyes. And you can sleep too. Let the day go, let the worries go, let everything go except this stillness, this warmth, this deep desert silence. The pyramid will be here in the morning. It has been here for 4,500 years. It can wait one more night. Close your eyes. Breathe. The stars are out over Giza, and everything is still. But before you drift away entirely, let me tell you one more thing. Every year, on the spring equinox, the setting sun aligns with the southern face of the Great Pyramid. The light catches the remaining casing stones at the base, and for a few brief minutes, the pyramid seems to glow. It is not planned, not staged, not a tourist attraction. It is simply geometry, the same geometry that the builders encoded into the structure 4,500 years ago. The same alignment, the same precision, the same understanding of the relationship between the earth and the sky. And every year, without fail, the sun finds the pyramid, and the pyramid catches the light, and for those few minutes, it looks, just for a moment, the way it must have looked when it was new. White and gold, and impossibly bright against the desert sky. A horizon. Khufu's horizon. The night is deep now, the air is cool, the sand is soft beneath you. Let the desert hold you, let the stars watch over you, let the pyramid stand guard, as it has stood guard for all these patient centuries. You are safe here, you are warm, you are still. Sleep now. The pyramid will keep its secrets for another night. The sand is cooling. The temperature drops quickly in the desert after dark, but beneath the surface, the sand holds the day's warmth, like a memory, like a promise. The stars continue their slow wheel overhead, the same stars that the Egyptian astronomers watched, the same stars they named, the same stars they used to align the greatest structure on Earth. Thuban, the star that was the North Star when the pyramid was built, has drifted from its position over the millennia. The sky has changed, the constellations have shifted, but the pyramid has not moved. It is exactly where Khufu's architects placed it, on the same bedrock, at the same angle, pointing the same way. The sky moved, the pyramid stayed. There is a comfort in that, in the idea of something that does not change, something that endures, something that holds its ground while the world spins and shifts around it. You can be that tonight, still, grounded, at rest. Somewhere across the desert, a night bird calls, a long, liquid note that hangs in the air for a moment and then fades. The Sphinx watches with its weathered eyes. It has seen every dawn and every sunset for 4,500 years. It is not tired, it is not impatient, it simply watches. And the pyramid rises behind it, dark against the stars, massive, patient, eternal. Let that image be the last thing in your mind tonight. The pyramid, the Sphinx, the stars, the silence of the desert. Everything is still. Everything is at rest. And in the morning, when the sun rises over the Nile and the first light touches the apex of the pyramid, it will still be here, waiting, as it has always waited, as it will always wait. Good night. Thank you for listening, and sweet dreams. If you enjoyed this, there are more stories waiting for you.